Hello and welcome to the sixth episode of the Leadership in Construction podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and I have an absolute fantastic guest for you today. I'm joined by Lauren Holland. Lauren is an account manager for the Hexagon Geosystems, and before that, Lauren was a Geospatial Consultant and Surveyor for Murphy Surveys. Lauren is also the co-chair of the Chartered Institute of Civil Engineering Surveyors 2040 Committee. So Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So I want to start off really by asking, how did you get into construction?
So I got into construction thanks to my careers advisor at university. So I went and studied geography at Aberystwyth in the middle of nowhere, which is what I wanted after growing up in London. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just thought, I've got this degree and, there's actually so many things you can do with geography. Went to my careers advisor and she suggested land surveying. I'd never heard of it. I Googled it. Obviously it pops up with some images and I was like, I don't really know what that is. I literally emailed the first 3 or 4 companies that came up on Google and just said, can I come do some work experience with you? I'd love to find out more. So one of them came back to me and said, yeah, come in your Easter break. And I think I did like a week in my Easter break and I really, really enjoyed it. So when I graduated, I said, can I come back and basically just do some more? Because I had applied for jobs, but I still hadn't got one. So they took me on, and after a few weeks, they offered me a role as a junior surveyor. And I never looked back, and I just loved every minute. And I just felt so lucky that I'd sort of stumbled upon a career that I absolutely loved and I'd never even heard of.
So it wasn't something that you were sort of interested right from the start, from a young age. It was something that you sort of got introduced at university, should you say then?
Yeah, not at all. And my dad's in the sort of glass industry, so he works sort of architects and things. So I kind of had been exposed. We've done a lot of family days growing up over in Luxembourg. So I've been exposed to that kind of construction life. So when I mentioned it to my parents, they weren't overly, because you sort of think, what are they going to think of me going into construction? It's like no one I knew had, was doing it. And they was just really supportive because I think my dad sort of had an understanding of it, whereas I've heard people go to their parents and say it and they're just like, you can't do that, it's not for you. So I felt lucky.
That's good. And so in terms of your degree then, geography, how did that help you in terms of the pursuit of that career?
So we did do a bit of field work with levelling. Obviously we did a lot of cross sections in terms of rivers. We did GIS, so I used to make some like flood maps, as well as you sort of play around with them and you can like flood a town and things. It's like a little simulator. So I think that helped, and I guess analysing data, because we did a lot of that, and you have to be very precise and you have to sort of know everything, especially when it comes to statistics. And I think because of that, it's helped me. Obviously, you can't afford to get a measurement wrong in surveying. So I think that definitely helped me in my career.
Fantastic. And so you joined as a sort of junior surveyor at Murphy Surveys, was it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, Murphy Surveys, yeah.
And so then how did you go to being sort of a consultant? It was through experience and mostly fieldwork, was it?
So I did, I was a surveyor there for about 2 years. So I was at a slightly different company beforehand. And then I took a year out to go travelling. And then when I came back, I sort of realised that there's more. I don't just want to work. I don't just want to do my job and go home. Like, I want to make a difference. And basically from that's why I got involved in everything that I do now. And basically through that, I started networking and I absolutely loved it. And I'm so passionate about land surveying that what more could I want than going to an event where I get to speak to people about land surveying and, actually provide them with solutions to their problems. And through that, I think it became apparent that was something that I not only loved, but was quite good at. So luckily, Murphy's gave me the opportunity to do both. So I was a land surveyor and also a geospatial consultant at the same time. Obviously, it's a bit of a juggle balancing both, because usually networking is evening and land surveying is 8 a.m. in the morning. But I managed it. But I think, that I was very lucky that they would let me be very flexible with my job.
Oh, fantastic. And so your job at the moment as account manager with the Hexagon Group, what does that entail then?
So I'd say it's slightly similar to the geospatial consultancy I sort of did at Murphy's. And it basically entitles me looking after accounts and key accounts. And what that means is I sort of touch base with them on a regular basis. I find out what jobs and projects that they've got going on, whether it be HS2 or Crossrail. And basically, I just sort of find out what equipment they need, and if they've got any questions, because I might say, "Oh, I've got this new project, and they're doing this, or it's tunneling, or what do you suggest?" And basically, I sort of find out everything I can about that. Go away, have a look at what instruments I think would be best, look at their budget, and basically come up with the best solution to what they need. But it is a lot of client relations, and I absolutely love that. Yeah, it's part of the role that I enjoy the most, which has obviously been difficult in COVID because I can't actually go see people, but managed to keep it up nevertheless. So.
That's great. What I wanted to ask was, so sort of in layman terms, what is geospace engineering? What is surveying, land surveying? Just on sort of for those that might not be 100% aware.
So putting it, I guess, in a small sentence would probably be it's the collecting of data, whether that be, so when I go into schools, I explain it as when you use your Google Maps, for example, that data has been collected, and technically that has been surveyed. So they've gone around, they've worked out where it is, they've coordinated it, and you have a position, you have the heights of buildings, and that's sort of how I summarize it in a way. You see it everywhere you go. Like I always explain how buildings wouldn't be where they're supposed to be if it wasn't for a land surveyor telling them exactly where they need to go. So that's sort of in a nutshell, really.
I think so. I mean, I come from sort of the design background, and sort of naively, as you start into design, you can design whatever. You can design works of art, but if it doesn't end up in the right place in the ground, it's not going to work ever. Or if it doesn't fit, or if it's not quite the right size. And the key thing to sort of any project that we always say is you have to have a good, accurate survey. And what I don't think a lot of people appreciate is that there are many different types of sort of coordinate systems. And if you're in the wrong one, or you're out, or you don't scale it right, then you're into a nightmare world of trying to get what you've designed to fit in the real world. And the way you take information is you say collect data so that you can produce design and then give that information out back to contractors to go and build it. Has always got to be the same going forwards and backwards, otherwise it just never fits. And so we work in the area that I work in, are massive areas, mostly airfields, so runways to big aprons and hangars. So we're talking large areas, and over such a long distance, that factor of error can get worse and worse and worse. So you've really got to factor all that in. So this is really quite a complicated science and art to getting it right. It's not, and if you don't, you've got to get it right from the start. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it sort of dawned on me quite early in my career that if I set out this wall wrong or this grid line wrong, then that entire building could be built wrong because of me. And it is quite scary to think about that responsibility is on you. And obviously, you'll be completely, as long as you do your checks, it's fine. But you're right, it's something that you have to be very careful with. I think a lot of people don't appreciate that, because even the other day I was in Regent's Park, and there was a site there which we were involved in for quite a while, probably about 3 years, and it had a list of all the sort of suppliers, people that had helped out in the project on the hoarding, but Murphy's went on there because for them, we're just 2 people that come in once a week. We're sort of a small part of everything that's gone on, but actually we were doing monitoring, and if we weren't there doing that, then they wouldn't know if the holes they're digging is affecting the surrounding buildings. And but the thing is, to them, we send their data and think, oh, okay, it's all fine, whatever. But it's kind of that appreciation that I think people just aren't really exposed to. So yeah.
I think you do think about it as surveyors are always there from inception of a construction project right through to the end, collecting data for the design, monitoring and setting out your design in the real world, monitoring, so like for the Crossrail, monitoring buildings so that if the subsidence from the tunneling, right through to collecting the final as-built data to display back to the client to feed into the asset management system. So they're there from start to finish, and designers and contractors will come and go. So that's a huge amount of sort of responsibility to sort of have, really. So in your sort of current role, then I take it the sort of collecting of data you talk about, you can collect it in many different ways. The most sort of common ways you're sort of using sort of total stations and things like that, but sort of more innovative technology, especially drones, are starting to become even more accurate now and collect information and produce more amounts of information in such a short space of time. And the use of augmented reality technology as well. I guess in your role at the moment, there's a lot of gadgets that you get to trial out and field test before it gets used in the mainstream. What's that like?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons why I basically went for the job here, is because I've always used Leica equipment, and with this job I am at the forefront of it. So as soon as a bit of technology is released, I get my hands on that, because we have to learn how to demonstrate it before it goes to market, really. So that if someone calls you up and says, "Oh, I'm interested, I've just seen this product, can you come show it to me?" Obviously, we need to be able to understand it. Like, at the moment, we've got a new GPS called the GS18i, and so not only do you not have to worry about leveling it, you can just hold your pole wherever you want, but it's got a camera in it too, so it takes photos. You can create point clouds from it. And I've just got one at home, and every now and then I literally do just take it for a walk, have a play around with it, sit down on my laptop, and it might not be during working hours, but I love it. I mean, you wouldn't do this job if you didn't. So I think, I feel very, very lucky. But it's just forever changing, and I think it's good to be part of a company that actually changes with it. So we're always, if suddenly people start wanting scanners and drones, then that's fine, we'll do it. It's one of those things, and it's forever adapting. You kind of learn one instrument and you're like, yeah, got to grips with it, and then like, now we're releasing this one, and you're like, that's so exciting, and it's so much information. But I think the industry needs it, and I guess you probably understand, we're lucky to be part of an industry where technology is exciting, and it's exciting to the next generation as well. So
absolutely. So what do you think's coming up now in the next in sort of surveying? What's going to be the next big thing in surveying?
I think you're right there with drones. I think the only difficult thing is that a lot of places need, you need access and you need permission, but it eliminates that health and safety site personnel. So for example, if you just needed someone to walk over site or have a look, you could just fly a drone over it rather than getting someone onto site, doing a induction or things like that. But on that note, I think machine control is going to be huge. Definitely. And the same thing, basically everything is talking to each other. So you've got your surveyor with their instrument, and that's also programmed into the machine. And I just think it's, when they all start talking to each other, everything is just a lot more productive and a lot safer. And same with automated machinery. I think, that's definitely something that's, has been tried. I don't know whether it's in the UK yet. I think it is. But basically it's just, you have a construction site and there's no one on it, because everyone's at home controlling machines, and you've got your drones flying above it, making sure that everything's going okay. You just need, don't have to worry about accidents. No one's life is at risk from standing behind a tractor because there's no one there. So I do think that's definitely the future, the way it's going.
So it sort of becomes computer games, that sort of thing.
Basically,
from a PlayStation.
Sit in your gaming chair and control a tractor.
Brilliant. So what are the sort of challenges that faces? So as a designer, there is almost a perceived conception that you think, there's an idea sort of by the industry that because technology has advanced so much, that designs can all of a sudden be produced much quicker, and coordination can be so much better. And I suppose in a lot of ways, yes, technology has improved design and our ability to share information. But there's this sort of misconception, I believe, that designs can be turned around a lot quicker. So I always feel, sort of in the sort of 13, 14 years I've been working in the industry, that deadlines have got a lot shorter. Every time I start a new project, it's like, well, surely you can produce this in a 1 month less. And that is a challenge that we have to sort of constantly battle against, is that technology is great and it can be your friend, but in a way it almost gives this sort of misconception that it means it makes the design quicker or better. And I don't think that that's really down to the people using it. What's your thoughts on that in terms of surveying and the introduction of new gadgets?
I agree in a way, because especially with the scanners, for example, is that, okay, yeah, maybe you spend less time in the field, but all that means is that you're probably spending more time in the office post-processing it. I mean, obviously it's ideal because especially actually in the UK most of the time it's wet and cold, so you don't want to be outside, but it's that same concept that, yeah, okay, technology is advancing, but with advanced technology means bigger data, bigger processing. So I think exactly the same. They say, yeah, okay, your days on site will be shorter. It might still take 10 days. It's just 2 days site, 8 days processing, whereas before it might have been the other way around. Things are slightly quicker. So I think now there's so much technology, and there's technology for everything. So whereas before you might only have a few tools, sort of say you have a total station, a GPS and a scanner, whereas now you have a GPS that can take photos. So therefore, depending on what you actually need to do, if it's literally just to measure a manhole in the road, do you need to get out your scanner to do that? Probably not. So therefore you have that in your one instrument, and then that makes your time on site a lot quicker. So I think it sort of depends on, if you know what you're using, then you can do it that way. But in general, I think, yeah, bigger data sets mean the same amount of time, really. So
it changes how we collect and analyze data. Yeah, certainly since I think we've probably used point cloud data on one project, and it worked great. I think it collected the survey great. I think the post-processing that you talk about was probably not as good as it could have been. I don't know why that was. Maybe time deadlines were stretched, but there were certain areas of the survey which we just completely missed off, and it was information that we didn't find out about until the contractor was on site. It doesn't exist on the survey because as you say, there wasn't, those sort of extra ridges or extra markings or whatever may have been picked up if the surveyor had been on site and seen it and gone, yeah, I've got to make sure that the designers know about that. But a vehicle flying up and down a runway or an apron or something, picking up lots of points, if you don't process it right to the end where you get it all back, it's not as good as, it's not useful to anybody. So and sort of the sort of point cloud data that I've sort of used in the past, years ago, I'd say, required almost supercomputers to be able to process the survey and to actually use the design. So we've had to go back to surveyors and say, that's great, but it's almost too much information. Can we condense that down? Do we still need supercomputers? Are they becoming much more user-friendly? Or are we still sort of trying to condense the information that comes?
I think it depends on the final product, really, because if you're looking at a BIM model, then you need that full data set to create that model. But at the same time, if they literally just need, I don't know, an elevation, you can just export a certain amount of data to just give you that one singular thing. And it's the same thing, like in terms of when you're using a total station, someone says, I need to set out grid lines, but all the architect has done, for example, is given them an entire CAD file which has everything you need to know about this building on it, but all they need is a quarter of that, but they don't know. So when you're trying to input that into your instrument, it takes double the amount of time, of course. It's the same thing. If you know what you need, you can just extract those bits of information, but it does come from the surveyor. So if the surveyor has collected that data, but the client says, oh, I only need this space, I only need like a certain amount of drawings, or then that's what they should be given, because otherwise, how can you handle that data, and where are you going to use it and how are you going to view it? So I think that needs to be looked at carefully.
Do you find when you're setting out that you tend to get a lot of data from the designers, and you've got to split that up to make it actually, I'm only going to put this pipe in today, I'm not doing the rest of the building, so I'll just get the pipe information. You have to do a lot of, yeah, but
I mean, it's not too bad, because like at Murphy's, but Murphy Server is actually just rebranded the Murphy Geospatial now. So I've got to try and remember. Murphy Geospatial, they basically train everyone up in AutoCAD. So you kind of do a bit of every department. So because of that, when that does happen, all it takes me just to set up my laptop and just basically delete the stuff that I don't need. But obviously it's inconvenient if you've kind of inputted it and then you're on site and you've got to go back to the office to like just edit it. But yeah, no, it does happen. But yeah.
So I imagine in terms of surveying, of collecting data, setting out in terms of putting the construction in the right place, and collecting data at the end as as-built information, it requires a lot of interface with quite a few people: clients, designers, contractors, asset managers, that kind of thing. What's been your experience with those interfaces, and sort of what leadership sort of skills and would you rely on in order to make sure you get the right information, or make sure the information goes in the right place? Especially on site, when there's so many different activities going on at the same time, you're probably one off 5 or 6 surveyors, I don't know, doing probably different parts of a project. What's that interface like, and what sort of leadership skills do you use?
So for what I've experienced when I've been on site, obviously there's always so much liaising with the project managers usually, sometimes the site managers, depending on where you are, and sometimes they don't necessarily know what you need or what you've been given. So there is, like you said, there's a lot of finding out who's who, and I think with that, the sort of what I've learned is just like keeping your cool, because it is frustrating that you get to site and you have a lot of work to do, but it's like, where's the data, who's got it, where's the coordinate system, who's got that, what are the targets called, but no one's giving you it, but no one knows. And so there's basically, like I said, asking the right questions, kind of like who installed the control, where can I get it, who did the drawings, where can I get a CAD drawing, who's the architect, are they on site, basically, like what floor am I on, and all those things. But it is you have to be very patient, and that's something that I've learned with it. And sort of just sitting waiting, and then being polite and saying, because obviously they're busy, and at the end of the day they've just said, oh, I'm just paying you for a day to do this, but they don't realise that all the bits you need to know to do that one specific job. Has been definitely very helpful. I think one thing that I've experienced as a challenge has been quite often when I'm on site with a colleague, and most of the time my colleagues are male, and we've gone to ask them stuff, and they always speak to my colleague directly, not myself, because they just assume that I'm just, and also because I'm quite young, and when I'm on site, it's basically like zero makeup too, so I look about 5 years old. So they very much do. They'll come over and then they'll like speak to my colleague, and they've always been really good at saying, oh, actually, I'm Lauren's assistant today, like she's dealing with it. But from that, I've had to really sort of, be that kind of person where, I am the leader here, and I'm sort of in charge of my team. So therefore I really need to sort of step up and say, look, like, I'm in charge here, and you need to provide me with this data, XYZ, basically, in a polite way, with a smile.
So is there a way of being able to, in terms of communicating and to get that? And then I want to come back actually in a bit and talk to you a bit more about the challenges you sort of face. But is there a way that you need to communicate in order to sort of win people around and to get the information you need? As I say, the times I've been on site, the surveyor is probably always, as a designer, the last person you speak to. There's always, have we got this concrete right? What rebar should we be ordering? When's this program? When do we need to do? And then eventually the surveyor might say, by the way, I still need to set this out, and you need to sit down and just say, okay, and maybe we need to change a few setting out points and things like that. It's always the last person that you talk to, or even, consider really. And that, it's the wrong way around. It's probably the most important part of any construction site. What sort of, how do you do that communication then? How do you win people around? How do you get to the information that you need?
So it's by knowing what you need. So I know exactly what my what I need to do my job. So therefore I go in with literally like, this is exactly what I need. And sometimes they sort of say, oh, because at the end of the day, like a lot of people don't know what surveying is. And when I say something like, oh, I need this, where's the datum for this? And then they're like, oh, I don't know. So it's very much like, you know, sort of gaining their respect and saying, look, like, can you just help me out? Being quite forward, and I think confidence has a lot to do with it, because it can be quite daunting, especially if you've never been on this site before and they say, oh yeah, go up to the site office, and you walk in and it's this open plan room of like 50 people and you're just like who am I speaking to? So it's very much like walking in there with confidence, like I know exactly what I'm doing, which helps because I can say, this is exactly what I'm doing, this is exactly what I need to do. And I think they then think, oh, you know what you're talking about, okay, I know what I need to get you, basically. And I find that helps. Whereas sometimes if you're like, oh, I've been sent here to do a survey, then they look at you like, that's really not helpful, because how am I supposed to help you if you don't know? So I think that's my biggest lesson.
So it's about being clear in what you need in order to fill this job, and being confident to be able to communicate that across to people. Yeah. So I want to come back to sort of the challenges that you've sort of faced working on construction sites. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think when I first started, so my first manager warned me about how women in construction isn't really common. And this was over 5 years ago. And it was fine. And originally I was like, oh, you know, people would just stare and whatever. And most of the time people would just stare. It was like being on a catwalk all the time. Like people would just like sort of watch you walk past. And it was a bit uncomfortable, but quite often I would just look them in the eye and just be like, you know, kind of sort of give this look, like get used to it really. But there were some inappropriate comments, like people wolf whistling, coming up to you all the time and being like, oh, are you single? Can I have your number? And I was like, just because I'm the only woman on site doesn't mean that I'm now available to like every single man. And I think that was tough because I didn't know how to handle it. Like no one, I think I was the only one in my team back then. And like sort of no one ever explained to me what you're supposed to say or who you're supposed to tell these things to. So you just kind of have to deal with it on your own. And I didn't realise that there were procedures for things like that. But it just made me really thick-skinned. Like I look back on myself now and I just think so many things don't faze me, because for me the most important thing is that I am like, I don't know, paving the way for the next generation. And I will take what people say to me so that they don't say it to other people, basically. Like if someone's not comfortable with me being on site or being in a certain place because I'm young, because I'm female, then I think, okay, well that's your opinion and I'll take that. And if you've got an appropriate comment, then obviously if it's inappropriate, I'll report it. But they say that to me and I sort of say, well, look, like this is the way it is now, the industry's changing, blah, blah, blah. And then I just hope that ends at me, because I changed their mind and their opinion, because that's the idea. So I think that's been the biggest challenge. And as well, sort of moving on in my career, it's very apparent that where I want to go, where I look, everyone who sits there is male. And it's very difficult to sort of see myself in a position where I've never seen a woman do it. I mean, it's really exciting. And that's where the whole leadership thing comes in, because I've had to become that person to get to where I am and where I'm going. And no one really guided me that way, but you do just kind of work out how to get there. So I think that's probably my biggest challenge at the moment, is trying to work my way up without having someone there who can help me, like as a female, basically.
So your early sort of career, and probably maybe even today, you don't really have much of a mentor that's similar, or where you want to go, that you can sort of turn to talk about these issues and get some experience from other people's experience. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like through networking, I think this last year has been really good, because I've networked and you meet people. And with CICES, like the new CEO, Anne, she is just amazing, and she's only been here for a short period of time, but already I look up to her so much. And I've asked her quite a few questions and she's answered them exactly sort of how I need them to be answered. And it's been amazing, because up until that point, I've had people who have helped me, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be where I am today without the men in my life, in my career, because they have supported me in every way possible. But still, it's like the sort of, well, at some point I'm going to have children because I want a family. So where I'm going, well, no one in that position has ever had to take maternity leave. No one in that position has had that problem. So how can I see how it's going to unfold? Because I just don't know. So yeah, I think that, and that's as well another reason why I'm so passionate about getting kids into survey and being on the CICES 2040 forum, because I want to be that mentor for people because I never had one. So
yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to sort of come to. And I do think there is a lot more that anxiety there for women. I mean, I've got 3 kids myself, and I've probably taken 2 weeks for each one to help support my wife, and my career probably has, in fact, if anything, I've probably got more productive, because in the evenings I want to spend more time with them, apart from when I'm doing podcasts, when they're in bed. And so there is a lot more of a change to a woman's career. And I think companies and employers need to be extremely respectful of that and know exactly what they want to do. And I think that's really important. Because there is a huge more anxiety for sort of young women. And I think it's very inspiring what you're saying, is that you didn't really have a sort of mentor, and through your experience you want to help mentor other people. I think that's absolutely inspiring, and I think absolutely that's, you should do that, because I think there's a lot of people out there that will really relate to that and will want to talk to you more about how do they deal with certain situations on site, or and how to get into construction. So can I talk to you then about sort of the 2040 forum for the Chartered Institute of Civil Engineering Surveyors? The mouthful that it is. What's it all about, basically? What's it about?
So it sort of became very apparent, I mean, across the industry really, that there is quite a big skills gap. And there is, as more people are retiring, we're struggling to get the younger generation in. But comes with that is that we're struggling to get younger members for CICS. And we offer a graduate member while people are studying relevant courses that are accredited. And basically, I'm pretty sure that's free of charge. And then they have the opportunity to then, once they've basically graduated and got a job, they can upgrade it to technical. It's paid, but usually obviously their companies would sponsor them and they pay for it. But what we'd seen is that even myself, when I went to my first ever event, which was terrifying because I'd never been to one, and I walked in and most of the room were about 40 years older than me. And I mean, it was fun. I learned a lot from people about their experiences, but it was very much like I didn't really have anyone that I could overly relate to and have that kind of conversation more on my level. And then as time went on, I met a few people and we kind of grouped together, and it was quite nice actually. And I really liked the community that came with it. And I went to a meeting once and someone mentioned the 2040 forum and that they're looking for young members. And basically you join it if you are early on in your career. So no matter what age, it's basically like if you suddenly change career and you're early on, the idea is that you can join this forum. And what we do is we work together and we sit on pretty much every committee in CICS. We have someone in, we've got people in council management, equality and diversity, just basically every committee a 2040 representative will sit on. And all it is just giving that point of view from our generation. So like, we want to digitalize things. So let's do that. Let's talk about, doing our membership applications online, because at the moment it's all paper submission. And that's where we're coming in and sort of saying, come on, let's do it. Like I've taken over the Instagram account because a lot of younger people use Instagram. And it's basically, we sort of just come in and I guess ruffled some feathers, and we want to just change things, because at the end of the day, this is our future there. Like I'm going to be a member of CICS until probably after I retire. So I want to shape the industry that I'm going to be in for forever. And with that, we sort of going to be running events, hopefully 2021. And they're aimed at younger people. So it would be more like pizza networking and like pizza Prosecco nights. and basically younger people can come, we can talk to them and support them, find them a mentor, someone who can help them with their membership basically, and just see that it's all about the community and how beneficial it is to be part of an institution. And that's sort of 2040 in a nutshell. But yeah, basically we're just trying to just change how things are done, really. So.
I do think that's really important. I mean, I got introduced to that institution probably about a couple of years ago myself, and probably about the time when I became a member of the Institute of Civil Engineers. And that's the probably appropriate institute for me because I'm a designer. But I also do a lot of the commercial side, where that sort of leads me into the Civil Engineering Surveyors sort of institute as well. So I'm very interested in being involved in that, and I sort of came across it a couple of years ago, and certainly the first impression was very much it's just full of sort of middle-aged blokes with no hair, and that's not quite the image, really. That's not quite what it is or should be. So I think this forum is a great idea, and getting things more digitalized, update the website, maybe things like that.
Yeah, that's on the books. That should be early next year, finally.
Oh, fantastic. What is it that your institution are doing to sort of encourage younger people into this construction industry?
So it's like I said, it's that sort of sense of community, and we are promoting in a way how being a member can benefit, whether it be technical or member, how it can benefit you and your career. And everyone who I've seen join, their confidence has just gone absolutely through the roof very quickly, because you kind of do get thrown in the deep end a little bit. It's like, you're in meetings and suddenly you've got to sort of speak out in front of everyone, and you go to these events and you speak to people you've never met. But what we do is, so we've got a couple of people, including myself, that are actively involved in STEM work, so going into schools. I'm also, I've recently, so basically one of the guys at work, he's retiring, so I'm taking over his educational account. So I'm now in charge of all the universities and colleges and schools and their equipment, because we supply them quite a bit of equipment. And through that, I sort of have my fingers in all these pots where I can introduce them to it and help and support them. And like I said, it is literally just showing them that it's for younger people too. And I always look at the people who sit around me, and I think these are the people who in 10, maybe earlier, 10, 15 years time, they're the ones who are going to be your key influencers, the ones who are going to be potentially CEOs, and I just think it's so important to be connected with that, because the industry is such a small world. And even though it's so big, everywhere I go, I bump into someone that I've met before at a different event. It's the way it is. And I think showing that to people, and especially with younger members, they can come to, students, they can come to events and they can meet employers. And that's invaluable to them, because that could potentially lead to a job. And that's because of the institution. So I think that's something that is really valuable to students, really. So.
Mm-hmm. And so talk about going into schools and STEM sort of work. Do you have to do sort of activities with children? Is it primary school? Is it secondary school?
It varies. So as a STEM ambassador, there's like an online portal, and basically they have schools, colleges, universities put up what they need. So they'll say, we have an alternative careers day. We need one person to come in and do X, Y, Z. And then you might have a primary school that says, we need someone to come in and do a whole school assembly, which is actually quite terrifying, because kids are ruthless. Like, they say what's on their mind. At least adults are very polite, whereas
or they don't say anything at all, or they're just completely silent. It's like, hello.
Yeah. And yeah, so it varies. Like the whole school assemblies are great because you can reach all ages. So that primary school I enjoyed. I spent a lot more time in my presentation because I had to tailor it to them. Like, how on earth am I going to describe land surveying to a 5-year-old? And you just got to relate it to their level, talk a bit about gaming and sort of maps and space and things. But everything through to your sort of GCSE level, where you can host. So I've done a couple of workshops where you go in, and basically it's up to you. So it could be anything. Like, obviously mine are always going to be geospatial, and always to do with land surveying technology. I'm lucky because I have access to kit, so I can sort of bring in a scanner with me, or bring in a turret station and be like, look how amazing this is. And yeah, so you just sort of tailor it to yourself and create an imaginary project for them. And then, yeah, with universities, it's usually specialist presentations. So if they have a module that could potentially be on laser scanning, and you come in with a specialist and you basically talk about everything, how it's advanced and where it's going, things. So it really varies. I think my folder on my computer is just huge now because it's full of so many different presentations tailored to so many people.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting sort of topic, really, because as a dad of sort of young children, I don't know a young child that doesn't enjoy playing in the dirt and like playing with little toy diggers and excavators, playing with water and things like that. And all those sort of things relate to construction, relate to engineering, basic engineering principles. So I'm really sad, and I don't know whether my kids enjoy it. They seem to enjoy it, but I always find an opportunity, especially when we go to the beach, to sort of, all right, we're going to need to now build the foundations and build this road and build this tunnel for this train and things like. I'm constantly building railways and things like this and playing with water. So I always find very, very young age children, sort of 2, 3, 4, love that sort of side of things. And it sort of seems like, because at the moment we do struggle in all areas of construction of getting younger people into the sort of construction on site. I think surveying might be slightly different because there is more technology side to it. Design, a lot of people like to go towards more sort of the technology side of design, as opposed to, I'm very interested in concrete, so I'm very much about concrete. Not a lot of people really do. So we do sort of start to lose children as they get to primary school. And almost, I sort of feel like, after I've spoken to quite a few people, that school at primary school is already too late. It's almost already too late. I mean, you probably captured 2 or 3 people in terms of inspiring them, but I think we always got to try and find, or everybody in the construction needs to try and find a way that can engage children in those activities around construction from a fun, playful side, right from the early ages of 2 and 3, because they love doing that. I've not met a child that doesn't love digging in the dirt. I really don't. Even if they're not meant to, they just play in the dirt and come back muddy. It's just
Amazing.
What kids do, isn't it? So I do sort of wonder, really, if even capturing them at primary school is almost too early. Have you ever? I take it you've never been asked to go to a nursery or preschool to do a presentation.
No, never actually. But on the topic is so I've been part of this pilot, and basically it's about changing the geography curriculum, and it's part of the CSTT. And basically we piloted, and I think it reached about 45 students, and it's all about the built environment. So it's commercial and geospatial. And basically the results were amazing. Like 50% of them came back and said that they would consider a career in the industry. But when you make something like that compulsory, like they have to do it as part of their course, GCSE coursework, then they're more likely to actually get involved with it and potentially do something at A-level or even a degree in it. But it's hard because the thing is it requires funding, because obviously we have to supply certain resources. But at the end of the day, that's exactly what the industry needs to happen. And the same thing, it could even be that there's like, I don't know, a week at nursery, people, they teach these kids just certain things and they go home. And as well, it's about the parents, because we do, so there are certain workshops that are like parent, I can't remember what they're called. Basically, the parents come along to these career days, and there is opportunities like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of people, if their 6-year-old child came home and said, I'm going to work in construction, I'm going to be a tractor driver, they'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. Unless they've been exposed to that, I don't know.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think parents is the mindset where you need to change rather than the children. Because I don't know if you could say my children advantage or disadvantage by the fact that I'm an engineer. So I don't force it on them, but I do sort of say, okay, we're playing with dirt or we're playing with sand. I'm going to try and teach you a little bit something here. And it is just really fun and exciting. So I'm sort of storing up a memory bank of little games that we play that is related to that. And you're right, if you have a parent that doesn't necessarily know much about the construction industry, but as a child that is interested in that sector, it could be hard to be engaging in it, because especially a child might think, well, okay, maybe I'm not, parents don't seem too enthusiastic about it, maybe that's not the right place to go. And I think that could be one thing. I was just thinking back to sort of my sort of childhood, and I don't think I always said I was going to go into civil engineering or construction. I don't think I ever really sort of planned it that way. Certainly, my story goes that I just stumbled across a job in an advert because I didn't want to go to university, and there was a draftsperson drawing, so I was going to go do drawings, which is great. Didn't really know anything about construction industry at the time, but I don't know if anybody that did work in construction until I did. So I don't know if I would have got the sort of support. I definitely don't think I would have got the information I needed. So it's probably perhaps trying to educate parents as well, and get them engaged and get their children to be engaged. And then when you start, and just driving around, the countryside, you see diggers, you see excavators. The A14 has been fantastic to drive kids down there, and they're looking out at like pavers and excavators, and you'd be able to tell them about that and all that sort of stuff. I think kids are just naturally inquisitive, and so they'll ask questions, and you don't know the answer. I mean, I don't know the answer to a lot of things, so you sort of just make it up a little bit. But I know something about construction, and I give them the right answer, and try and inspire them in that way. So I think maybe there's something in that to talk to parents with younger children.
I think I agree, and as well, I do think that it, painful enough, it probably will be our generation that sort of can do that, because I think it gets to a point where, we can do, but how can you reach all these people? Whereas I think there's a lot of people in our generation that are a lot more open to things. We've been exposed to a lot more, everything's a lot more open. You can sort of say to a kid, you can do whatever you want. Basically, and I think because of that, the skills gap will be closing, but I do think it will be something that will happen in the future, rather than immediate. Obviously, it'd be great if we can get kids right now to move up, but I do think it'll probably be like, everyone that I know, I'm the only one out of all my friends that working, other than the friends I met in the industry working construction, but I know that if their kids said anything to them, that they wouldn't say no, because they know me, and that's sort of the way it goes, I think. So yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned that you took a year out to go traveling, so I'm just curious a bit more about that. How that was whilst you were working at Murphy Surveys, and the fact, how did your employer take that you wanted to go away for a year, and where did you go? What experiences would you recommend it?
Yes, so I asked for a sabbatical, and they said that they would give me 3 months. So I went with my husband, who also works at Murphy's, and basically they said no, which is fair enough, because originally it was 10 months, so it's a long time to sort of have someone on your books who you never know what's going to happen. So we both quit, and we were like, but the thing is with the industry is that land surveyors are needed, and they're always needed, and if you have experience, worst case scenario, well, not I say worst case, but we can freelance if needs be. We were lucky enough that my parents, who live in London, we could just move back into there, so it wasn't too much of which I think sort of led us to we'll just quit. And then basically, so we started in Japan, which is by far my favorite country that we did out of all of them. It's just amazing. Like, I think it's so nice to be somewhere where the culture is completely different to where you are, and it makes you really appreciate and respect their culture too. So that was absolutely amazing, and the food was incredible. And then we started off then we went to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, went to Malaysia, and then we did Indonesia, which for me, because one of the reasons why I took geography was because I'm an absolute volcano nerd. I love them. I think they're fascinating. And I've always wanted to see one erupt. I've wanted to feel one. It's weird, but I love it. And basically in Indonesia, obviously, there's just unbelievable amount of volcanoes. and that's one of the reasons why we went there. And we did this hike, which is I think it's the third most active volcano in the world, which is constantly smoking. If you touch the ground, it's warm, which is a little bit scary. Your tour guide has a little meter which measures the vibrations to make sure it's not going to erupt. But sadly, it did actually erupt about a month after we left, and a few people did die on it, because obviously it is a tourist attraction, but it comes with a risk because it's an active volcano. And then we went on to Australia, New Zealand, and then America. So we did California coast, and then did a road trip through America down to Texas, up to DC and New York. So it was pretty epic.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I recommend it to anyone who wants to go. I just say do it. The people say, my father-in-law, he basically said that one of his biggest regrets was never doing it. It's a leap, because you have to most of the time leave your job to go do it. But if I hadn't gone traveling, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have joined all the societies and community. I wouldn't be a STEM ambassador, because that came from traveling. Whereas beforehand, I was very just happy just doing my job, going home, and that was it really. So yeah.
And I think that's the beauty about certainly surveying. You talk about being freelance, being a designer in the civil engineering. It is a transferable skill, and you can do it literally from anywhere in the world, in any country. Yeah. The basic engineering principles don't change depending on where you live. You just got to adapt to your surroundings, you know. And so, could you ever imagine yourself working abroad, do you think?
We actually had an interview in New Zealand, in Canterbury, because for me, stemming from my love of tectonic plates, they do tectonic plate monitoring, because obviously they had the really bad earthquake there. And I was thinking, like, imagine I actually can do a job where I think I would just absolutely love to do. We knew someone in the area who I used to work with in my first ever job, actually, when I came out of university. And she was just like, oh yeah, come in for a chat. So we had a little chat, and they had a job opportunity where they were sort of tendering for, and it would have been perfect for my husband and I. And it was one of those things where I was like, I could see myself living here. Their way of life is so different. It's so chilled out, so relaxed. But the thing is, for me, is that I am such a friends and family person, and I just couldn't be that far away from them. I just couldn't be. And it's the climate, like, as much as it does rain in the UK quite a lot and it's a bit chilly, I love it. I don't think I'd want to live somewhere where it's too cold or too hot. So
yeah, no, I'm one of those sort of weirdos that like the rain, and because I come from the north, I come from Cumbria, so it's constantly raining there. So you've got to like it, really. There's no choice. That's amazing. So I sort of want to just sort of end on asking, what do you think is the most important aspect of leadership?
The most important, I would say, helping those around you thrive. And I think using their abilities in the right way, basically. So it's very much like, if I have a team of people, and in my current job, actually, it's quite apparent that I don't know everything. Like, I know bits of everything about every bit of technology, but we have specialists. So if someone said to me, I have a monitoring job, blah, 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 like, yeah, I have experience in monitoring and I know how to use the kit, but I have to use other people's skills around me to help me provide that solution to a client. Same with the team. Like, if they're saying, okay, right, you've got an assistant to do this and whatever, I have to work out, well, okay, that assistant has the background in topographical, whereas that one has a background in site surfaces. So therefore, this system will be better to help me when I'm doing my traversing, because they've got experience doing it, whereas this one will be more helpful doing a different aspect of it. And then at that same time, you're helping them thrive in what they're good at and what they enjoy doing, because I don't want to pull that person who's good at that specific thing and move them over somewhere else, because they've chosen that path for a reason. So I think that the key thing really is, obviously with that comes your sort of your listening, your respect, that trust. It all comes hand in hand, but I just think with leadership, it's about supporting other people. It should always be about encouraging everyone to do their best. And I think it's hard with the 2040 forum. It's great because even our end of year call today, we all went around and spoke about our challenges this year and what we'd accomplished. And with the challenges that people said, we all supported each other and said, "Oh, I can help with this, and I can help with this." And some of them, you know, especially at work, sometimes you can think, "Oh, well, we're up against. We've got the same deadlines and the same this." And obviously, because it is to do with sales as well, it might be, I don't know, competing for the same thing. But at the same time, it's all about, at the end of the day, you work together as a team and you just help those people do well. So
no, that's really inspiring. And last thing is just what would be your tip, or what would you recommend to a sort of young girl thinking about going into construction, thinking about maybe going into surveying? What would be your biggest tip, your biggest recommendation from your experience? What would you tell that girl?
I would tell her to join an institution. Obviously, I'm all for CICES because that's what I am with. But whatever's relevant, whether it be RICS or ICE, join them because the support networks are invaluable. There's always going to be someone there, especially these days, that can relate to you, that can help you. And as well, that especially most people have equality and diversity boards too. So there's always going to be someone, and that's the idea of what we have, is that we want someone where anyone can come up to them and go, "Oh, that they look like me, I can do that job." And that's exactly why. And I would say join an institution, get networking, because I think networking is something that will really, really help them, because especially if they're early on, they can meet people that could benefit their career in the future. And just get stuck involved and do it.
Well, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Lauren. I hope you've enjoyed it, and well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.